Welcome back to the Dynasty Football Key. Hey, I got a very special guest for you guys today, Dave Kluge from Football Guys, and he's got his own channel, Football Guys Dynasty. So, really wanted to get you on here today, get your thoughts on some of the Dynasty landscape for the 2024 season. And hey, Dave was really awesome. Him and Alfredo, they actually got me um, I won a contest to do the Scott Fishbowl draft with those guys. So I met them in person. Really great hosts. Really appreciate what you guys did. Everyone had a really great time. And it's kind of a great way to kick off the season. And I'll see you again over at the Fantasy Football Expo coming up next week. I believe August 9th through 11th at the at Canton, Ohio, at the Hall of Fame. So come check us out over there as well. And Dave, how you doing today?
Doing good, man. The expo is always a good time. This will be my third time going. I missed it last year, but I was there the 2 years prior. Always a lot of fun. I get in Friday afternoon. I'll be there through Monday morning, so hopefully I'll get to meet some new people there, see some old faces. It's a good time.
Yeah, man, it'll be my first time, and it looks like I'll be bringing the whole family. Couldn't get a babysitter, so
Nice,
no,
man.
it'd actually be awesome. And yeah, guys, come to the booth. I have a little football set up, throw some balls, win some prizes and stuff like that. And I'm just really excited for it. Also, gonna do like the cornhole tournament and stuff like that.
There you go.
I'm coming off an ACL recovery, so I won't be doing the flag football.
Ah, I know that's
um,
that's my problem. I played quarterback and then hit
okay.
my left shoulder, blew that out about 4 years ago. Had surgery 2 years ago, and it's just never really come back. So I think my days are behind me.
Yeah, man. But let's jump into it. Talking about quarterbacks, I want to know your thoughts on the rankings here. This doesn't just have to be following my rankings, and again, we're in tiers, guys. So really, a lot of these players, you just want to get them at the right value. But let's get this thing started. In the first tier, I know a lot of people have their thoughts on how the order goes here, but who do you feel is considered top tier quarterback?
For me, it's Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes, kind of in a tier of their own. I've got those two above the rest. If Stephon Diggs still is Stephon Diggs, or if Josh Allen still it's Stephon Diggs, we'd probably be talking about him in that tier by himself. But there are some questions about how he can, navigate through a career without Stephon Diggs. Of course, Patrick Mahomes, it's kind of weird. Like I see people finding reasons to fade him. I was in a dynasty mock startup recently where he fell all the way to 106 in a super flex mock. I mean, at the end of the day, when you look at what Mahomes has done throughout his career, he's given us 2 years as the overall QB1. And then the worst year we've seen from him was a per game QB9 finish. So, like, you're getting guaranteed top 10 production with a ceiling being the best quarterback in fantasy football. And he's still got years of his prime ahead of him. So, yeah, pretty comfortably that's my 1 and 2, and I'm not really gonna fight too hard on what order they should be in.
I love that, man. Let's roll into this second tier because I think people are already arguing with that first tier potentially. So, who do you have in this tier two?
Tier two for me is Lamar Jackson atop that tier.
Okay.
And then after that, it's Jalen Hurts and CJ Stroud.
Okay. Okay. And look, the argument a lot of times is going to come down to the rushing, right?
Mhm.
For Lamar Jackson and Jalen Hurts here. For me, we have seen Jalen Hurts outscore Lamar Jackson multiple seasons, and he has better weapons. So for me, I have Hurts over, but again, this is all within the same tier. And with the Stroud, it's to me, it's similar to the Mahomes situation: elite arm talent,
Mhm.
great weapons. The thing you did mention about Mahomes is he has better weapons than ever. So it's just it can continue to get better. They're going to, you have to also factor in some of the offensive coordinator play calling. And to some degree, you got like Andy Reid and Stroud.
Mhm.
His team is really bright from the offensive standpoint. So I like these guys right here. And
I think
for
Stroud
me,
is kind of the
yeah,
outlier in this tier because he could either move up or down based on what he does this year, and I think that's why I'm
exactly.
okay putting him up here. You look at, like, his production profile and, like, what he has actually done so far in fantasy, and he's actually a lot closer to probably Joe Burrow and Justin Herbert, and maybe some of these guys that we're going to talk about in the next tier, but I'm okay putting him up in that tier higher because he did that as a rookie and he still has so much room to grow. I mean, like a 50 touchdown season shouldn't be out of the question for CJ Stroud within the next couple of years.
Absolutely. He's also the youngest here. And part of the reason these next quarterbacks we'll talk about, I have lower as well, is because we've seen all of these other guys have a potential season ending injury. So let's jump into this tier three. Who do you got in this tier three?
Tier three for me, this is going to be Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert, Caleb Williams, Kyler Murray, Anthony Richardson, and Jaden Daniels. This is a pretty big tier for me. Let me know if you want me to go through those again.
So again, that Burrow, Herbert, Kyler, those are those injured guys that I mentioned. And we know they have that a little bit more upside, but that's kind of why I have them in the same range as well. And who's the fifth that or the other that I missed?
So it was Burrow, Herbert, Kyler, and then Caleb Williams, Anthony Richardson, and Jaden Daniels.
Yeah, yeah. So the other guys with the immense rushing upside. So I love that, and it's been tough because for me, I do wonder in Dynasty, how much you want to weigh. Hey, for Jaden Daniels, we haven't seen it yet, but are you willing to just put him there? I am personally because it's all about getting ahead of the curve, especially when we're talking Dynasty. And he has that similar upside that we saw from an Anthony Richardson, but we've seen the Kyler Murray and Anthony Richardson get injured as a rushing type. Does that ever kind of weigh into how cautious you are with this vaulting a Jaden Daniels type up?
No, not at all. And I think the concerns with Jaden Daniels are like what his longevity could look like. He could be on a similar trajectory to a Justin Fields where he struggles to read NFL defenses. That pressure to sack ratio that we saw in college carries over into the pros. I think that's the concern with Jaden Daniels is that like 3, 4 years from now, he might be out of a job. But I think as long as he is out there, he's going to be giving you elite production. I mean, this is a guy who rushed for 1,134 yards in college, led the NCAA in yards per attempt on the ground, and he's a good passer, and he's got good weapons around him, and he has a coach that's like brought the best out of a young developing quarterback before. So Jaden Daniels checks basically every single box for me except for the expected longevity box.
Absolutely. I'm excited. I'm excited. Commanders might actually be decent again. We'll see what happens there. I think they should have a good defense as well. All right. So tier four, lay it on me. How are you feeling about this next tier? Is it a significant drop off? I don't think so. There's a lot of high points per game scores potentially here, but who do you got here?
Yeah, for me, this tier and Jordan Love is the one that could probably move into the tier above based on what we saw, but I still do have some concerns. We saw a really good start to the season, a pretty mediocre middle of the season, and then a really strong finish. I keep going back to that kind of dip in the middle of the season that concerns me a little bit. Now that NFL teams have a full season of tape on Love, I wonder about how he might be able to adjust, but Love is still atop that tier for me. And then after that, it's Trevor Lawrence, Dak Prescott, and Brock Purdy in here.
All right, Trevor Lawrence. We got our guy Jack and Brock Purdy. Yeah, for me, I like this tier. I recently moved Brock Purdy ahead of Dak because their points per game was similar. Purdy was about half a point less, and then the age doesn't really matter for Dak, but it is still about 8-year difference or something like that. And I like the play calling behind him as well, and I do think they'll keep him. So I love this tier of guys. I've been struggling with Trevor Lawrence. I've been actually been lowering him. It's hard to lower him below Dak because of age, but I just haven't seen the points per game, and I don't see the offense of weapons around him being better than last year. Maybe it's the same as last year, and maybe in the future it increases, and maybe he just gets better. But T Law is the main guy. I kind of have issue like figuring out where to rank. Um,
Yeah, I mean,
um,
he
yeah,
looks good on film, but the fantasy production hasn't been there. Like when you watch him play,
yeah,
he's a good NFL quarterback, but he's just consistently kind of this high end QB2, waiting to see him take that step forward. I don't know if he's going to or not. We know he's a good passer, but they typically run a slower pace. They don't have the best weapons around him, so it'll be interesting to see kind of how the rest of his NFL career unfolds.
yeah, yeah. I have Trevor Lawrence at 15. You got him at 13 here, pretty much the same. And in the next tier, I have a rookie quarterback, Drake May. But is that where do you have Drake May? Is he in this next tier for you?
Yeah, I've got May and McCarthy both in this
Okay.
tier. And this tier is really kind of a hodgepodge of like hopefuls, like what could be. It's Drake May, it's JJ McCarthy. Actually, Tua Tagovailoa is at the top of this tier. I just
Yep.
bumped
I've
him up
got
a
him
few
in there too.
spots.
Yep.
Yeah, I bumped him up a few spots with the new contract there. So it's Tua, Drake May, JJ McCarthy, Bryce Young, Jared Goff, and Deshaun Watson in here for me.
Yeah, and I'm pretty locked in on the Carolina Panthers. Not from Carolina, but I've had at least 5 guests on the show from Carolina, whether they're fans of the team or not. And they're just throwing so many weapons around the guy. You have to give him another shot here. And just based on some of the other quarterbacks below with the age and all the weapons they're throwing at him, we'll know after this year. We'll know if he's good or not. But it's just really hard to give up on the number one overall pick who has all of these different weapons around, not just at receiver, but running back and all of those things. Okay, so let's see. We're getting close to the end for the quarterbacks. Who do you have in tier 6?
So for tier 6, for me, it's Baker Mayfield, Geno Smith, Kirk Cousins, Will Levis, and then just a bunch of other veterans that I've got here. Aaron Rodgers, Matthew Stafford, and who's the other one? Why am I drawing a blank? Aaron Rodgers, Matthew Stafford. Oh, and Russ Wilson.
And what about Jared Goff?
Oh, Jared Goff was in the tier above. I had him right
Okay.
after Tua. Sorry
Whoops.
about
All
that.
right. That's my, yeah, no problem. It's just like, can't forget about him. And,
Yeah, absolutely not.
okay.
Deshaun Watson was in that tier as well in tier 5. I've got him
Okay.
a smidge above some of these veterans just because I don't feel like we've seen a fair shot of what he can do in Cleveland. He's been banged up. The offense has really obviously, not been anything particularly special, but I can't help but keep going back to the fact that he was a top 5 quarterback every single year in Houston and thinking that maybe this year, healthy, a lot of the off the field stuff behind him, that he could potentially bounce back.
Yeah, I agree. He still has some legs under him where none of the quarterbacks in tier 6 have any potential for rushing upside from what we know at this moment. And really just for this final tier, uh would you have Penix in here? And would you have him ahead of Bo Nix?
Uh, I have Penix and Bo Nix back to back. I actually have the slight edge to Michael Penix. I just think that he's a better prospect. He's also
Okay,
going to
that's
have some
exactly
better
how I got
weapons
it.
around him when it comes time to start. So I've got Penix and then Bo Nix.
Yeah, one thing I started to learn is you do have to follow a little bit of the draft capital. Penix was drafted 2 quarterbacks ahead of Bo Nix. It just is what it is, and I love
Draft
the
capital is
weapons around him.
the metric that is tied closest to fantasy production than anything else. So we kind of fall into this trap of like falling in love with these day 3 wide receivers and running backs and whatnot. But like if you just drafted in your dynasty league straight off of draft capital, that's actually going to give you a pretty strong indicator for how these guys are going to look.
Awesome, man. Well, I appreciate going through those. I mean, it looks pretty good. Um, and I would just say Justin Fields a little moonshot upside. I don't mind taking him later in drafts. Daniel Jones got a little rushing upside as well, but with him coming off of the ACL injury this season, it's just not the year I want Daniel Jones as he's recovering. And then I also don't want him long term, unfortunately. So it's kind of tough for Daniel Jones where he's sitting right now. But with you being a Chicago guy, do you still believe in Fields or is it the Steelers' problem now?
It's tough, man. I was like the biggest Justin Fields truther, like loved him at Ohio State, was stoked that the Bears got him, but he just never took that developmental step forward that I wanted to see in the pros. We know the rushing upside is there, but like I kind of talked about with Jaden Daniels, like that pressure to sack ratio is no joke. Like if you're unable to avoid pressure at the NFL level and it's turning into sacks and those sacks are negatively impacting the offense, you're not going to be able to find a job for a long time. You got a couple of days, with the ones in Pittsburgh when Russ Wilson was out with that calf injury, and the reports out of Pittsburgh are that he's nowhere close to starting, that there's still a huge gap between him and Russell Wilson. And Russ didn't look good that last year. So like if you're struggling to compete in a job with Russell Wilson, that just, you can't help be concerned.
Yeah, I agree with that. I've been buying low on Russell Wilson just in startups, like with one of my final picks. He's still sitting there, so I'll take him. Okay, so now we're at tight ends. I had Travis Kelsey kind of already in there just because, but I don't. He's not actually who I have as tight end one. But who do you got as the tight end one for Dynasty?
This is tough because I think like with Dynasty, there's so many different ways to play it. I'll lean towards youth a little bit, kind of talking about some of these. I think youth is important in Dynasty. I think that depending on your roster construction, like if you're contending, Mark Andrews and Travis Kelsey should be your tight end one and tight end two. But talking Dynasty rankings overall, the top three for me is Trey McBride, Sam Laporta, Kyle Pitts, and Dalton Kincaid.
Awesome. Yeah, you actually answered a question that I had written down for you. I really have been curious when it comes to these players, how much you're weighing that 2024 production versus just the remaining amount of seasons they have left to play. Like Kelsey he just doesn't have that many seasons left to play. So it's just kind of one of those tough spots. So it was Dalton Kincaid. You had McBride one, huh? Okay.
I did,
Um,
yeah. I'm a big fan
all
of
right.
McBride. They're all so flat for me. Like all three of these guys are very good,
Yeah.
but McBride, like he's got the draft capital, he got the breakout. If you look, his targets per route run were actually higher than Kincaid and Laporta last year. Of course, that was without Marvin Harrison, so we'll see how that impacts him. But these three, and then Kyle Pitts is in that tier for me as
Okay.
well, which I'm still holding on to hope for Kyle Pitts. But you look at his metrics, like what he did on a per route run basis, his efficiency, his usage, all that tells us that he's an elite tight end that has just been hamstrung by poor quarterback play. So I still have him considered as a tier one dynasty tight end.
Awesome. Yeah, I ended up putting Pitts in a tier of his own. That's how
I
I
get
dealt
it.
with it. But you got to have some conviction. So I agree
He's
with you.
younger
Just
than Kincaid.
yeah,
He's still one of the younger guys out there, which is crazy to think going into year four.
yeah, and he's got two quarterbacks. Pitts should be fine. Um, and he had a slight injury, but also Laporta had a slight injury. They're all going to be fine and bounce back. So yeah, I'm good with this. For me, the way I do it is if you're a top two target in your offense, then I like you. So even though Kincaid could be the number one in his offense, I still think McBride, even if somehow Marvin is the number one year one as a rookie and McBride's the number two, I still like McBride as a number two target on it in offense. So I like any of these guys. And it's kind of my philosophy through the next tier as well. Who do you have here? Is it going straight to the veterans?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. It's TJ Hawkinson, Mark Andrews, Travis Kelsey,
Okay.
George Kittle. That's tier two for me. And all these guys, TJ Hawkinson's not old by any means. And if he was healthy, he'd be in the tier above. I mean, still just 27 years old, which is young for a tight end. We typically see them well into their late 20s, early 30s, still being productive. But that ACL injury is a little bit concerning. He's probably going to miss, at least half of this year, and we'll see how he can bounce back from that. But Kittle's in there for me as well.
Okay.
30 years old. He's still going to have a couple of years of good production ahead of him. And we're seeing his role change pretty dramatically. Still leading the league in yards per route run like he does almost every single year, but we've seen his route participation go up for 5 consecutive seasons now. He actually had the third highest route participation of any tight end last year. So now that he's getting older, he's running more routes and he's blocking less, and that's what you
There
want to
we
see
go.
for fantasy.
Yeah, they want to keep him healthy for the Super Bowl.
Hmm.
And I'm a sucker for all of this Netflix receiver hype, and
Oh,
he
dude,
was
it's great.
awesome on there.
Yeah, I love
Love
that
checking.
show. I thought quarterback was good too, but receiver
Yeah,
was
this
so
one's
much better.
better. Awesome. All right, next tier. So I've got Ingram and Ferg and I think Njoku in this tier. Who do you got in this tier?
So I've actually got this guy. He's in a tier by himself because I don't know where to put him.
Okay,
Brock Bowers.
there we
Um,
go.
And like he could be really good, could go the way of a lot of other highly touted tight end prospects and just kind of face plant after his first year. I don't know what to expect, but I'm okay taking him immediately after. You've got the really young kind of blue chip guys at the top. You got these productive veterans in tier two. And then Brock Bowers, like I don't want to lump him with Cole Kmet or Evan Ingram. Like there's so many other guys that I just outright prefer Brock Bowers to. So he's kind of in his own mini tier right here. He's easily going to be moving up or down after this season.
Yeah, absolutely. Not too much to say about him. I do think year one, a lot of receivers around Devontae Adams just don't get the ball a lot
Hmm.
historically, but it's a dynasty, and we saw also on receiver Adams is going to be out of there pretty soon. So,
Yep.
all right, next tier. All right, who's in your next tier?
Evan Ingram at the top of the tier, and then David Njoku, Jake Ferguson, and Cole Kmet. So this is
All
kind of a
right.
weird mix. We got some veterans. We still got some younger guys as well. Evan Ingram's obviously getting up there, but he's the most productive of the bunch. David Njoku still a little younger than I think people realize because he came into the league so young, but I think the cat's out of the bag. I mean, Njoku could easily find his way in that tier two if he finish it. Like if he can go off in 2024 the way he did in the second half of 2023, he's shooting up those ranks as well. Ferguson and Komet, they both concern me a little bit. Ferguson's production was so heavily weighed by touchdowns, it's pretty tough to replicate. And then Cole Komet, like in a vacuum, I think he is such a talented tight end. But right now, Gerald Everett's there, and we know that Shane Waldron loves Gerald Everett. Outside of that, we got Keenan Allen, DJ Moore, Roma Dunze ahead of him on the pecking order. I think he's a very, very good player, but the next couple of years, it's going to be pretty tough for him to carve out a meaningful role.
Yeah, absolutely. So just full disclosure, before you came on, I just went through my ranks one more time, and I was looking at Komet, and all I'm thinking is he's going to be Caleb Williams' tight end. Eventually, he's going to be the main guy. I know Everett is there, but they had already paid Komet a couple seasons ago. They love him. He's the prototypical size of a tight end. We've seen
Mhm.
him have big games with other quarterbacks. So if Caleb Williams is the guy, I don't see the Bears just letting this guy go. Everett's just on a 1 year deal and older, so I
I
don't
think they've
mind
got him
it.
on under contract through 2029, I believe, or 2028.
Okay,
Like they gave him a huge extension. So I think he's got a longer or he's going to be there for the entire duration of Caleb Williams' rookie contract. My fear is that Roma Dunze is also going to be there for that entire rookie contract. And DJ Moore, my guess, he's still relatively young. I think once his contract's up, they're going to want to extend him.
yeah.
So my fear is that even over the next 5 years, the best case scenario for Komet is still being the third guy on the team.
Yeah, we'll see how that goes, but don't forget about this guy. Everyone, I don't think
Yeah.
anyone thinks about him anymore, but we'll see. So let's roll through the rest of these tight ends. Who do you got in tier 5?
So tier five for me, Pat Fryermuth is atop that tier.
Nice.
Big fan of him, and it seems like he's just kind of the forgotten guy after he was injured last year. But I expect Arthur Smith to draw up quite a few more plays for Pat Fryermuth and kind of remind us of who he is. Dallas Goddard's in this tier as well. This tier gets kind of gross. Like I feel like once you like we're already just kind of at
Yeah.
the hopes and prayers tier really quickly with tight end. After Dallas Goddard, though, I've got Isaiah Likely. Might be a little bit too high on him, but I think he's a very good player. And then Ben Sinnott, Michael Mayer, and Luke Musgrave.
Sweet. Um, all right. I do
I don't know if
like
Ben
that.
Sinnott's there. Is he? Oh, there he is. Yeah. All
Yeah,
right.
we got him. We
Cool.
got him.
Cool.
Yeah, a little Ricky Fresh face there. Yeah, likely and Mayer. I ended up just moving into a tier down because since they're backups, but I do see likely actually being closer to getting away from Mark Andrews than Mayer. Mayer's is kind of screwed, to be honest, for a little bit, but we'll see how they run that. So let's go ahead and move on, and I'll just say I do have Schultz in this tier as well,
Yeah.
behind Pat Fryermuth, or actually have him right neck and neck with Fryermuth, but and behind Goddard. But anyway, we'll go ahead and move
See, if
off
I
of
if
the.
I don't have any of these guys that we talked about, this is when I'm just okay picking up Taysom Hill and just plugging him in my tight end spot and just praying that he can have a boom week because once you get past Brock Bowers, Evan Ingram, Njoku, everybody gets pretty shaky. You got kind of like 10 tight ends that you feel okay about, and then outside of that, it's just a wasteland.
Yeah, it really is tough, man. And in the Scott Fishbowl, you really cleaned up. I got Taysom Hill over there, because I was low on quarterback and maybe I could throw him in there. And he does a couple extra things, so you never know. Like really, all you want out of a touchdown is, or out of a tight end is a touchdown. So if you can get that, then you're pretty much fine at that tight end position. I got away with the Jonnu Smith blow up week last year and won a week off of that. So you just never know.
Yeah, Johnny
Uh,
Smith. I didn't see his picture up there, but Johnny Smith would be in my next tier for sure.
Yeah, and historically, Miami doesn't use those guys, but you never
They
know.
also haven't had a guy like Jonnu, a guy with that
Yeah,
yards after the catch ability.
absolutely. All right, so now we are on to the running backs. If I can get all these ads out of here. So, yep, running backs, 2024 Dynasty and beyond. How are we feeling? I've got a top three in my tier one.
I'm
Who
guessing
do you
it's the
got in tier
same as
one?
my top 3. Let
Okay.
me hear it. I'm guessing we got the
I'm
same
going
one.
Bijan. I'm from
Yep.
Texas.
Yep.
So and then I actually have Gibbs ahead of Brees Hall. Just
That's
from a
fair.
dynasty perspective because
A
of the
little
pass
younger.
catching.
Yeah.
Just barely a little younger, about 9 months younger, something like that. I do prefer a workhorse back, but the problem for me with Brees is, and he's recovered from the injury, but he had the injury. The quarterback stability is not there. It will be gone soon. It, Bijan's got the security at quarterback in the offense. Gibbs, I think, has security at the quarterback in the offense. So that's just what Brees is missing. But Brees is amazing. So it's hard nitpicking like that. But that's how I got it. Do you have it, Brees, too?
I got Brees ahead of Gibbs, and you talk about the pass catching. I mean, he had a 13% target share his rookie season, 17% target share last year, fourth best in the league. So I prefer Brees to Gibbs, but it's not like a super strong stance for me. All three of these are studs. Like you can't go wrong with any of these guys. There's some days where I think we should even put Brees ahead of Bijan because we've already seen him with a top 5 finish, and we haven't seen it from Bijan yet. But it's these three. Any way you want to shuffle it up, pretty tough to push back on any of them.
Yeah, my 2024 ranking video, I did have Brees as the number 2 running back overall behind McCaffrey. So I'm definitely high on the guy. Love me some Brees. So who do we got in tier 2? Are we
Tier
staying
2, I'm
young?
guessing it's probably the same as you as well. I think a lot of people kinda have the same top 5. For me, it's McCaffrey and Jonathan Taylor in this tier. The only thing separating them, production-wise, you're gonna get pretty similar numbers from Christian McCaffrey and Jonathan Taylor than you will from the tier ahead. The difference is in the tier ahead, Breece Hall is the old man of that group at 23 years old, and then 22 years old for Bijan and Gibbs, and then McCaffrey's 28, Jonathan Taylor's 25. So that's the only real difference for me in this tier is the ages.
Yeah, I ended up putting Taylor at 6 with a Chan there at 5 just for the upside, but
Oh, you're gonna
realistically,
hate my Chan rating, man.
okay,
You're gonna hate me
okay.
when we get to that one.
Is he in tier 3? Let me ask that.
No, and he's not in tier 4
Oh,
either.
okay. What I will say, guys, is you're gonna want the workhorse running backs because it's so rare nowadays, and there's nobody really behind Jonathan Taylor. He's really set up to have an amazing year. So who do you got for tier 3?
Tier 3 for me, this is another guy, these guys are all workhorses, and maybe we see it again this year, maybe we don't, but I think all these guys profile to be 3 down backs. So for me, it's, Ken Walker, Jonathan Brooks,
Okay.
Travis Etienne, and Saquon Barkley.
I like it. Yeah,
I know you said
that
you're
is
a Texas guy, so you gotta appreciate that Jonathan Brooks ranking, right, all the way up there at RB7.
yeah, I mean, a little bit aggressive, but that was another one where I was touching up the rankings right before this, and I was having a little bit of issue. Where do I get Brooks all the way up here? Do I
I see
just
Brooks
jump
right
the
in the middle,
shark and
top row,
and
yeah.
just and just just put him up there? So we'll see. And so you had who was the other one? You had Ken Walker, Brooks, and
Ken Walker, Brooks, Travis Etienne, and Saquon
Etienne.
Barkley.
Yeah. Okay. Sweet. All right. And yeah. So I like all of those guys as workhorses, especially for this season. And the age on Etienne is great.
Yeah.
The connection going back to college is great. I'm all in on what Barkley can do. So I don't even think we have to spend too much time on those guys. Jonathan Brooks, second round draft capital. That's significant. We've seen this team use Christian McCaffrey in a workhorse role, even the Chuba Hubbard in a workhorse role. They want to run the ball, keep the ball out of Bryce Young's hands. So
I
I'm
think
all
even
with
more
that.
important than that, what you say about, like, the other guys in, Carolina, what excites me more is Dave Canales, the head coach there. He was the offensive coordinator last year in Tampa Bay, where we saw Rashad White leading the league in weighted opportunities, and he wasn't good. Like, Rashad White was one of the least efficient running backs in the league last year, and they were still giving him, like, 25 touches per game, so I think that's just in Dave Canales' DNA is to feed a workhorse back, and I think we're gonna see Jonathan Brooks get that role by about the midway point of the season.
Absolutely. Yeah, Rashad White was one of the ones I was having trouble with. Do I put him over Walker because of the pass catching type of upside? But I have heard it's more volume than efficiency for White, so I can understand that. And I think that might lead us into tier 4. Who do you got in tier 4?
I waffle back and forth all the time, but Kyron Williams, man, what he did last year, the per game RB2, I know there's concerns about his size and his athleticism and his injury risk and all that. Like, I'm not the biggest Kyron Williams fan, but I feel like having him outside of your top 10 in Dynasty is just, um, you can't do it based on what we saw last year. After that, I got Isaiah Pacheco. All these guys in this tier have red flags, right? Like Kyron Williams, I labeled them all. Isaiah Pacheco, 7th-round pick. That's his big red flag. I've got Rashad White in this tier as well. Really inefficient last year, but the volume was there. And then the last guy in this tier that I have is James Cook, another guy who's a little undersized. Job might be threatened a little bit by Ray Davis. So this is honestly, like, even though this is technically my tier 4, this is a tier that I'm kind of okay just overlooking. Like, I'll let somebody else pay up for these guys. If I've got any of these guys on my roster, I'm trying to either trade up or down, either trading up into a tier for a little bit more safety, or trade down. Like, I'll trade any of these guys. Give me some scrub veteran you don't want anymore, Joe Mixon in a 2nd-round pick, and I'll be happy with that.
Yeah, and I've been working with the player profiler crew as a producer, and they're against Kyron.
Yeah.
I was struggling with the Kyron ranking. Here on my screen, you probably can't see it, but I had Kyron at 10 and Cook right there behind him, and
Yep.
Pacheco.
That's where I got him. Yeah.
It's tough. Good offenses, but late round draft capital for these guys. Some of them. Cook, I just felt like there's just not a lot of, it's so much so much that's ambiguous about that whole team that I was like, maybe he just gets to be in a situation where he's picking up the slack for just Diggs leaving or whatever that might be. So tier 5.
All right, we're finally there. We finally got to Devon Achane.
Okay,
Okay.
okay.
I got concerns about the size. Mike McDaniels likes to rotate a committee. And I get it, dude. I could totally be wrong on Devon Achane, right? Like, this guy could just be the next Jamal Charles. I see you got that jersey up there in the background. He could be just one of those hyper efficient guys that just does it over the course of his season. Another Chris Johnson, whatever you want to compare him to. But I have concerns about the size, the injuries. Raheem Mostert is still going to be the lead back there. I think Jalen Wright profiles to take a lot of work. And my fear is that Achane is just for the rest of his career kind of in this like 8 touch per game type of role. And, I think he's a good football player, but he's just one of those guys that I've been trading off of, in a league that I'm in. I was able to just trade where I got rid of Achane for Jonathan Brooks in a second. So for me, that's moving up a tier and getting a pick on top of it. Achane scares me a little bit. That's I won't beat a dead horse there.
No, fair enough. I like the offense. I like what he was able to do, but he never profiled as someone to stay healthy. He wasn't able to stay healthy. And they seem to be happy with the committee approach. So I definitely prefer a lot of the guys who are just solidified starters ahead of him.
And Achane was a guy, like, I was screaming it last offseason, like, the best 3rd-round pick you could make in your rookie drafts. I was drafting Achane everywhere I could,
Yeah.
but now that he kind of peaked in value, I'm okay moving off and switching to another running back if I can. After Achane, though, in the same tier, I've got Trey Benson. Blake Corum is going to be a high one, and I know that's going to surprise a lot of people, but I got Trey Benson and Blake Corum back-to-back, and then Josh Jacobs and DeAndre Swift rounding out this tier.
Nice. And like these rankings here. Jacobs was in Marshawn Lloyd. That dynamic is something I always wonder about. How long do you think Jacobs is in town, and how that might affect a Lloyd type of a situation. Like with a Chan versus a Monster, like we see the writing on the wall. Eventually, Monster will be gone, but then they extend him for one more year, and then maybe Jacobs just keeps getting extended out further and further, and you never know when the other guy gets that full role. But yeah, the Corum being ranked this high, I have him pretty high as well. But I think I have him just outside of the top 24 that we're going to discuss. So you got him much higher than me, and it's like, can you really have both Kyron and Corum that high? But we have seen the Rams have never had a consecutive RB1
Right.
and since Todd Gurley, I believe in 2016 was the last time they had a back-to-back RB1 that was the same person. So won't be surprised if it flips, and it'll be a huge hit for Kyron if that does happen.
All right, so to round out the top 24 here, I'll put all these guys in one tier together.
All right.
Ramondre Stevenson, man.
All right.
I had some concerns about Ramondre, but he got paid by the same team that he was drafted by. And I'm not a big, like, follow the money type of guy, but I think you could put a little bit of weight in that when it's re-signing with the team that drafted you. So I think that he's going to see some good usage in this Alex Van Pelt offense. After that, Alvin Kamara, a guy who's getting up there in age, but man, he was a per game RB5 last year. Like, he's still getting it done through the air. After that, I got Tajay Spears and Tony Pollard back to back. I think they're both very good running backs. I'll give the slight edge to Tajay Spears because of his age. And then rounding out this tier, Jalen Warren and Zach Charbonnet.
Nice. So you did get some youth in there, and you just said, "See you, Najee." Not gonna happen.
Yeah.
And
And that's, my next tier though, that's where I've got all those guys. And I know we're only doing the top 24,
yeah,
but this next tier is Najee, Derrick Henry, Joe Mixon, David Montgomery, Javante Williams, Brian Robinson. And that's the tier that I actually like targeting the most because these guys are so cheap. Like
yeah.
everybody's like,
Honors in
get
there.
these
Like,
yeah, James Conner is another one. Everyone's like Austin Eckler. They're like, get these old guys off my team. And like you can go out right now and you can get Joe Mixon for a third round pick if somebody is really, really trying
yeah,
to move off of it. And there's a good chance you're getting top 10 running back production this year. So I think like the scales have swung so far to like the old running backs suck narrative that I like drafting and buying these old running backs because they're free.
yeah. Part of the dynamic is that best ball mentality. Technically, we do more best ball drafts than we do any other type of draft. So it's just
Mhm,
it kind of becomes a reflex after a while. So
mhm.
we'll move off the running backs, but you know, yeah, it's pretty interesting. I am curious. Do you see any other rookies cracking the top 24 at some point? And maybe that applies for every position. But I would assume it would not be a Jalen Wright because of your thoughts on Achan.
I mean,
Um,
I like Jalen Wright maybe more than I like Achan, and I've got him just outside of this tier. But you look at him; he's 2 inches taller, he's 25 pounds heavier, he's got a better size adjusted speed score. I think that Jalen Wright actually comps very similarly to Raheem Mostert. So I think like as Raheem Mostert's getting up there in age, going into his age 32 year, if he gets hurt or something like that, I'd expect Jalen Wright to step in and kind of be the running back one, where Achan is more the RB2. Of course, Achan's got the big play upside. We haven't seen that yet from Jalen Wright, but it wouldn't surprise me one bit if Raheem Mostert's out of the picture and there's more work going Jalen Wright's way than there is Achan's, just because Jalen Wright has the size that Achan doesn't.
Absolutely. He is big, I think maybe 220, and then just as fast. So pretty good BMI and just crazy speed. So let's go ahead and move on to receivers. Wish us luck actually getting through all these guys. But
We still got
receiver,
20 minutes left. We're good.
yeah,
We're
yeah,
doing it.
receiver is a very important position, and I love the guys at the top. I've got CD Lamb number one. The problem with these top guys is the quarterback dynamic for me. The confidence in the player is all there, but I think you get a little extra touchdown upside if you don't have JJ McCarthy and you have Dak Prescott, but maybe CD only has Dak for 1 year, and then you've got other guys that are up there like a Jamar Chase who's locked in with the Joe Burrow. So how do you have this first tier sorted out?
Yeah, for me, it's CeeDee Lamb, then it's Justin Jefferson, then it's Jamar Chase, and then it's Amon-Ra St. Brown. And I think a lot of people might be confused seeing Amon-Ra up in this list, but listen, man, if you're still worried about draft capital after a man got $140 million contract or whatever it is, like I think that second contract throws concerns about draft capital out the window. Amon-Ra, he's here to stay. In redraft, like just for the 2024 season, I have Amon-Ra ahead of Justin Jefferson because we know he and Jared Goff can get it done. Like they've got a great connection with one another. So that's it for me. It's CeeDee Lamb, then Justin Jefferson, then Jamar Chase, then Amon-Ra St. Brown. That's my top four.
That's exactly how I have it, and I have that for the 2024 season as well. And you know what? I actually lied. I do have Marvin Harrison Jr. in there, and that's the one where I may have
That's
jumped the
fine.
shark. But we'll see. Who do you got in tier four?
Tier four for me. This is kind of a weird one. There's not a lot of rhyme or reason to it. Marvin Harrison is my wide receiver five. Great prospect, 21 years old, great situation with a quarterback who has a history of supporting fantasy wide receiver ones. Stars are aligning for Marvin Harrison, and he could easily jump into tier one after this year. After that, I got Puka Nacua, and I know some people might be higher or lower on Puka Nacua. He's just a polarizing guy, man. Like you look at what he did year one, you look at him doing it without Cooper Cup. You look at the draft capital. What you see on film is exciting, but there are some concerns about his overall analytical profile. I think he's a very polarizing guy, but after what he did his rookie season, it's hard to push him outside of tier two. And then the last guy running out tier two for
Garrett.
me is AJ Brown,
No. All right. AJ Brown. He's really up there in points per game and has been consistent with that.
but he's
Um,
27, which is scary.
yeah, that's the only thing I was wondering because I have Garrett Wilson in this tier. And the problem is what I was saying about the quarterback situation with the guys above. Like, I just don't know how long Aaron Rodgers will be in there. But we know AJ Brown's locked in with the Jalen Hurts, who's only 25 years old. So I
Right.
feel like he's ending his career as an Eagle. Um, and maybe that's a good jumping pad into tier three. Who do you have in tier three?
Garrett Wilson, Malik Neighbors, and Roma Dunze in that order. Garrett Wilson, man, he's so good. Like I know it, but he's been a wide receiver two and a wide receiver three in fantasy. And I get it. Like we can contextualize that. He had Zach Wilson and he had Joe Flacco and he got 2 snaps with Aaron Rodgers. Like, yeah, he hasn't really had a fair chance. I get it. But he's going into year three now, and we haven't seen anything close to a top 10 finish. So I know the underlying peripheral metrics are there. I know he's a good football player, pops on film, has all of the numbers that we want to see, but I just can't move him up higher until I actually see him producing like an elite wide receiver.
And I love well, first of all, I fully agree with that. It's just unfortunate. I would love for the Jets to get a good quarterback after Rodgers leaves. There's no certainty. Maybe he has this good 2024 and then goes right back to doing the 13 points a game or whatever that might be.
Yeah.
And you had a Dunze and Neighbors, right? These next two rookies.
Yeah, and I actually I have Neighbors slightly ahead of a Dunze, but man, they're
Okay.
so close. It doesn't even matter. Like those guys
Yeah.
are a coin flip for me. It's tough to compare the two because Neighbors is going to have more volume to start his career. He's got more big play upside, but I think that a Dunze is a more polished receiver, but he's also got an uphill battle to finding a meaningful target share early in his career. So both amazing prospects with little nitpicks in their profiles, but both, pretty confidently taking those guys in Dynasty.
Yeah, it's again back to just how much do you weigh 2024 versus the rest of their career.
Like,
We know Doomsday is going to be locked in with Caleb Williams, and but that's definitely not a homer pick. I mean, a top 10 wide receiver has had so much success in the past that you just can't ignore that.
Yeah, and
So
I'm honestly I don't wanna say I'm, like, fading him, but I haven't drafted a ton of a Dunze in
okay.
2024 drafts just because of rookie quarterback, Keenan Allen and DJ Moore, it's gonna be tough for him, but I think long term, there's a lot of safety in a guy like Roma Dunze, and I'm hoping after this year, like, I expect him to have a down and quiet rookie season because of all of these external factors, and if there's any discount on Roma Dunze after this season, better believe I'm buying it next year.
And just since it's your team, I'll stick to it on a little bit more. The offensive play calling, how do you feel about that? Or are you needing another change before you really buy into this Bears offense?
I want to see what this new offense looks like with Shane Waldron. It'll be a little bit different than what we saw with Getsy, where it was very
Yeah.
schemed up for the opponents. It felt like it was a different offense every single week. I'd rather Shane Waldron just roll out an offense that he's a little bit more confident in, that we can kind of get an idea of what it'll look like on a week in, week out basis.
All right. I'm excited for this team. Caleb has a low bar to just be the best Bears
Yeah,
quarterback ever.
he can do it his
just
rookie
get 4,000
season.
yards. Come
Yeah,
on.
his rookie, yeah, 4,000 yards and 29 touchdowns, and you're the best quarterback ever. It's a very, very low bar. This next tier for me, man, these are some of my favorite targets because I think that you can get them for relatively cheap. They've still got room to grow. They're young, all that. So this tier for me, Brandon Ayuk, Jalen Waddle, Chris Olave, Drake London, and Nico Collins. I can read that back to you a little bit. So Brandon Ayuk's the first guy. I actually had two of them flip flop. So Brandon Ayuk's my top guy here, then Jalen Waddle, then Chris Olave, then Nico Collins, and then Drake London.
All
And this
right.
is just a nice little blend of youth. Brandon Ayuk's the old guy in this tier, but he's still only 26 years old. You go all the way down to a guy like Drake London, who's just 23. All of these guys have room to improve and get better. And they've all shown us that like this is kind of like my arbitrage Garrett Wilson. Like these guys are cheaper than Garrett Wilson and they have similar floors and ceilings over the long term. So this tier right here, these are the guys that I'm kind of aggressively trying to get wherever I can. We're missing Drake London
Oh,
at
Drake
the
London.
end of
Gotcha.
that tier.
Thanks.
And Drake London, I think a lot of people have just anointed him as like he's going to be a wide receiver one this year. I'm a little nervous about it if I'm being honest.
Yeah, Olave 14 points per game last year, significantly higher than Drake London, but we're expecting a big jump. Historically, Kirk Cousins has had top 10 receivers left and right, even has been able to support two top 10 receivers. So we'll see. And just to double check, Brandon Ayuk, Jalen Waddle, Nico Collins, Chris Olave, Drake London. What's the order you got here? Is this right?
I've got Ayuk, Waddle, Olave, Collins, London, but I can move Collins ahead of Olave. I've got those guys are
Mm,
really, really tight for me.
yeah. Well, I'm all in on this CJ Stroud, anyone around him.
Yeah, let's do
Uh,
Collins ahead of Olave. I'm
all right.
confident with that now that he got his extension.
Awesome. All right, tier 5. How
One
we
man in
feeling?
this tier, Tyreek Hill.
Okay, there
Tyreek
we go.
Hill.
I was
I mean,
waiting for that. You did that with the
he's a
Chan
top
too,
3
man.
guy, but, like, what are we still getting from him? Like, is he gonna retire after this year? Are we getting one more year? Like,
Yeah,
he's the type of guy. What happens with Tyreek Hill, like, I don't wanna wish this on anybody, but look what happened to Cooper Kupp last year. Like, back-to-back seasons as the overall wide receiver 1 year where he's got a bad hamstring and he's injured, and now all of a sudden the dynasty community has written him off for dead. And I think that's my
yeah,
fear with Tyreek Hill is the same thing could happen with him. Tyreek Hill comes out week 1, tweaks his ankle, doesn't have a season where he's 100%. He goes for 900 yards and a few touchdowns. Going into next year, nobody wants Tyreek Hill. So
yeah,
that's the fear with Tyreek Hill is the floor can just fall out from underneath his value at any second.
yeah. From a dynasty perspective, his price is still very high to acquire, and it would just hurt you to trade for him if anything went wrong. Essentially, you
Mhm.
have to pray for just give me 2024, and I don't care what happens after that. That's how you would have to approach it, pretty much.
Yeah, so he's one of those guys that, like, if he's on my roster, I'm okay just riding him until the wheels fall off. And I'm kind of doing the same thing with a lot of these aging veterans like Derrick Henry. Like, I've got no interest in trading Derrick Henry away because, like, a second or third round pick isn't going to be as useful to me as Derrick Henry will. I'll just keep Derrick Henry on my roster and keep plugging him in until I can't anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. So tier 6 is probably where we'll see some sort of drop off in points per game. But who do you got in here?
DJ Moore atop this tier, 27 years old, not a young spring chicken anymore by any means, but still has some good years ahead of him. After that, Michael Pittman, then Devontae Smith, and then DK Metcalf. So this is all these guys are pretty close in age, 25, 26, 27 years old, and they're all guys that have, given us flashes of wide receiver 1 potential, but these are more or less wide receiver 2s in fantasy.
Yeah, just locked in starter roles for all of these guys. Smith, I stopped disrespecting or undervaluing him a long time ago. He's just good. He's good. He's
Mhm.
great. I like him. He's awesome. Don't hate
You know what?
on Smith.
I had him a tier below, but I think I'll put T. Higgins in this tier as well.
Okay.
T. Higgins still just 25 years old. I know he's coming off a down year. Um, I think the thing I like about T. Higgins is that if you get him this year, he's almost assured to bump in value next year.
There we
Like, look at
go.
what happened to Deontay Johnson. Deontay Johnson, 28 years old, went to what was the worst offense in the NFL last year and still saw a bump in value. And that's going to happen with T. Higgins. Wherever he goes, people are going to sing a song about how it's better for his situation. So you can get T. Higgins for cheap now, knowing that regardless of what happens this season, he's almost insured to increase his value going into next year.
Yeah, and guys, you might not even have to draft him here either. Just with where he's going in draft. So yeah, good
Right.
call out there. And then let's see. Yeah, tier 7. How you feeling here?
Zay Flowers atop this tier, first round draft capital, look good as a rookie, checked all the boxes that I want to see. Jordan Addison right behind him for pretty much all the same reasons. Another round 1 rookie that went for 900 plus yards. You like seeing that. And then I've actually got, I know we said we're going 24 deep, but I've got a few extra guys in this tier. So
Yeah,
the
go
rest of
for
the
it.
guys in this tier, Rashi Rice, Jackson Smith Najigba, Tank Dell, and Brian Thomas Jr. I know you got a lot of faces to sift through here, so I can read them
Yeah,
back
you
for you
see
again
me
if you want.
scanning the room for all these guys.
So after Rashi Rice, it's JSN, Tank Dell, and then Brian Thomas.
Okay. If I can
And
find
JSN,
it.
man, like
I've already forgotten what Jason looked like. That's how his year went. No,
let me see if I
I
can
got
see
him.
him
I
out
got
there
him. I
somewhere.
got him.
There
I
you
got
go.
him.
Yeah. And
So,
then
okay, Zay
after
Flowers,
Tank
Addison,
Dell,
Rashi Grace,
and then
Jason,
Brian
Tank
Thomas
Dell.
Jr. is the last guy here.
All right. Yeah, I like Brian Thomas Jr. A lot of upside. Another first round guy. People are worried about the route running, similar to a DK Metcalf type of a situation, sort of. But they don't have a lot of other options there. They're going to need to grow with him.
Mhm.
I still think it'll be him and Kirk Cousins and Evan Ingram leading the way in the next couple seasons. And big questions I have. We got to it's not about the two guys that are going to be suspended because that's just a this year type of a situation. We know these guys can produce and are going to be top two targets, and Addison and Rice. But JSN, are you expecting Lockett to, just either this year or next year just to be out of the picture, and then JSN gets that role? We saw amazing touchdown grab from JSN at the end of the season to help, I believe, game winner for
Yeah.
them. So there's some promise.
So, I mean, I don't think that we're just going to see Tyler Lockett disappear. I don't think that's going to happen at all. But his yards per game have trended down for 3 straight seasons. His yards per game last year were the lowest we've seen since 2017. So the age is clearly getting to him, and I think he's still a good football player. Like, he can move the chains, he can get open immediately off the line. I don't think he's just going to disappear. But I think he's kind of already on that slow, steady march downward that we see from older wide receivers. And I think that JSN could carve out a much bigger role. I think a lot of people look at JSN's rookie season as just an overall disappointment. And sure, it was, but like, it's not like he was terrible. And he also got injured in the preseason and missed all of training camp. Like, how important training camp is for a rookie wide receiver, and he missed that. So he was fighting an uphill battle all season. I'm still just a believer in the talent. The guy that I saw at Ohio State, I think he's got the skill set to be one of the best receivers in the league. And I just don't think that we can really put too much weight in what we saw last year.
I love it. I love it. You'll continue to see, players that had a season like his typically don't have a good follow up season. But I'm with you. I still got him on a roster. I did sell him someplace, but I'm not completely giving up hope yet. And I'll ask one more time.
So I'll just real quick,
go
the
ahead.
one thing I'll say about JSN, it reminds me a lot of Michael Pittman, and JSN's got a little bit more draft capital, but Pittman was like the top of round 2, and Pittman's rookie season, he really didn't do too much. He got banged up in the preseason, spent a little stint in the middle of the season on IR, never really got up to full speed. And he had 503 yards his rookie season, and everyone just said, well, Michael Pittman must suck. But the guy was dealing with injuries all year. That's so hard to do as a rookie. And then he bounced back in year 2, went for 1,000 plus, and now he's the Michael Pittman that we all know. I could see JSN, like when we look back at his full career in the rear view, I think we're just going to be able to throw away that rookie season. I mean, the guy had a wrist injury that he missed out all of preseason, all of training camp. I'm able to contextualize that slow start. Maybe I'm just delusional for my love with JSN.
Yeah, we want guys to play through injury, right?
Right.
And I guess what you're saying is have a little bit of context, and maybe that'll help you guys. So are there Spencer Morrow asks, if you have a good roster and a ton of draft capital, who are some guys you're willing to consciously overpay for, or are you against forcing a big move?
Man, Jonathan Brooks is a guy that I'm okay paying up for right now.
Right.
And I know I talked about it. Like, I traded Devon Chan in a second, or I'm sorry, I traded Devon Chan and got Brooks in a second. But he's one of those guys right now. I'm kind of unplugged from consensus rankings. Do you know where he's at, Corey? I'm guessing he's probably like in the 16 to 18 range in consensus rankings would be my guess.
Brooks, consensus, I'm not sure. I've got him at 15.
All right. I get that's probably pretty average.
I overpaid for him in the draft. Spencer, I overpaid for him in the draft. I think I traded like the 203 and the like 210 in the draft to move up to the 109 or something to get him.
That's an overpay. I think that's what you should be paying to get. Yeah, 2 seconds for a guy who could potentially be a top 3 dynasty running back. I love that move.
Awesome. Well, we're out of time here. I do want to get one more hot take that maybe you can close the stream out on. And look, I'm looking at player profile. They've got Brooks at 15. So yeah, that's where they've got him to. But yeah, I'll go ahead and give you a chance to give a hot take, and I'll just close it right after you finish. You don't have to actually give any explanation on it. We'll just close it after that.
A hot take. Marquise Brown is going to be a top 10 wide receiver this year.
And I psyched everybody out. I do want to give Dave one more shot to let everyone know where to find him. Let us plug your stuff.
Yeah, real simple, man. Just follow me on Twitter at Dave Kluge. That's Kluge. You'll see all the content, what I'm writing, recording, audio, all of it getting shared from Twitter, along with some memes and jokes and some fun things like that. At Dave Kluge on Twitter.
Awesome, man. And I really appreciate you coming on. Look forward to seeing you and the rest of the crew at the Fantasy Football Expo in Canton, Ohio. I'm looking forward to checking out the Hall of Fame as well. So thank you guys for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video. See ya.